Retirement Cafe Podcast, episode 101, Putting Your Ladder Against the Right Wall, with Stuart Lewis of Rest Less.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Cafe Podcast, which is sponsored by My Financial Planner. Not knowing when you can afford to retire or what your pensions will provide can be worrying. My Financial Planner provides independent, fixed-fee retirement planning advice, bringing clarity to your financial future. At My Financial Planner, we build a financial plan for your retirement and equip you with the knowledge to implement the plan and buy any product you need yourself. Find out more about getting a plan to fund the retirement you really want at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. Today, I welcome back Stuart Lewis, the founder of Rest Less, an organisation which aims to inspire today's generation of over 50s and 60s to get the most from life. They do this by focusing on a wide range of aspects, including lifestyle, learning, financial well-being, work, volunteering, and community. In episode 63, Stuart explained how Rest Less helps the over 50s find age-friendly employers. In this episode, we chat about other ways that Rest Less help those of us over 50, and unfortunately I must count myself in that number, to get the most out of this period of life. If you listen to my conversation with Professor Andrew J. Scott last week, who's the author of The 100-Year Life and The New Long Life, you will have heard him mention how the period between the ages of around 50 and 70 will begin to represent a new stage of life, as more and more of us live to be 100. Professor Scott mentioned the importance of having purpose and possibly reinventing ourselves. So it's great to hear from Stuart today how Rest Less is helping people do that and make sure that they have the ladder against the right wall for the next 20 to 30 years of life. So let's get into my conversation with Stuart. So welcome back, Stuart Lewis.
It's a real pleasure to be back. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. When we last spoke, we spoke about your organisation and how you help people get back into work or take on different careers in their retirement years, i.e. maybe they've left their main career job, etc. But one of the areas, and when I'm talking to people, is that they may have lots of experience, but the skills that they kind of see in other jobs, they may think that they may not have them. They're not sure of their abilities to maybe learn some of these new skills. A lot of retired people or semi-retired people or people of the, kind of the normal retirement age are thinking about volunteering. They're thinking about, can they get involved in something? They don't want to stop. They want to have some purpose. And I'm reminded of the conversation that I used to live in Hong Kong. And in my 20s, I was running a restaurant. And I remember that the people, it was at the fourth floor down in a basement, this restaurant. It was a very nice restaurant, but it was like 4 floors down. They build up and they build down in Hong Kong because the land's so expensive. And I remember that we used to put the rubbish bins out. And I remember seeing the people coming to take the rubbish away, who were generally kind of Hong Kong Chinese. And the ages of them were, I remember this lady, she must have been as old as my grandmother, who's no longer with us, but, she was definitely in her 70s and she was cranking these big bins on her back. And I used to think to myself, what a life if you're still having to do that. And I remember one of my friends turning around and saying, well, you've got to remember that she's still feeling that she's contributing to her family, she's got purposeful work, she may actually enjoy it, she may have been doing this for all her life, it may be part of her community, there's a lot of different things going on. So I'm very interested that we in the UK have had a mindset possibly of, you mentioned before, when your father took retirement, it's a bit like, I've done my 40 years, I get my gold clock and then that's it. And you've developed a whole thing with Rest Less around, further learning and hopefully creating further opportunities for people.
Exactly right. I think the big thing is giving people the choice to do what they want to do. For some people, that is slow down. For some people, it's kind of speed up. One of my biggest beefs is actually talking about the over 50s as a big homogenous lump of people. And actually, it's one of the most diverse groups of individuals with individual hopes and ambitions that perhaps you could have. You wouldn't talk about the under 50s as a homogenous group of individuals, right?
No. So what are the things that you see people doing, or what are the things people are interested in when they're hitting the website? What are they consuming? What are they after? Or maybe you've got some personal stories of people who've kind of really shifted and learned some new stuff and moved on.
Yeah, so I'll focus a little bit on the kind of the transition points and the learning and so on. I think people seem to be really interested in a lot of our ideas and inspirational guides, whether it's kind of a top 10 list of role opportunities that are in a specific area where you're giving something back, or a range of opportunities within the charitable sector, for example. They kind of, I think they're popular because people can it gives them ideas. And even if those individual ideas are not what they would like to go into, I think it gets the creative juices flowing kind of in a non-linear manner. And opening people's ideas to this idea that they may not have the exact same CV experience, but the transferable skills they'll have built up from 20, 30, 40 years of working where they have done. They've probably got a lot more transferable skills than they perhaps think they have. And with that comes a world of opportunity. I think we are seeing quite a lot of interest in our learning and courses side as well. And I think there's three main buckets of that as we see it. So there's people looking for kind of self-development opportunities. So whether it's better to further organizational skills or to enhance maybe digital skills for PowerPoint or Excel for any specific reason. You've then got very technical skills or something related to a specific job. So perhaps someone's quite interested in retraining as a mortgage advisor. Actually, you can go and take your CMAP 1 course, for example, through a distance learning, and it will give you a good leg up when you're applying for a mortgage advice firm. And I think the third aspect we see, and given our nature has been more about employment and volunteering, we were surprised to see this, but really kind of excited to see this. But a lot of people are interested in learning for more creative or fulfilling reasons. So courses such as Introduction to Fiction Writing or learning a new language, for example, is quite popular. And I think people are just excited about looking at the next 20 years and around what they can achieve and what they can still do. I think in contrast to many people's expectation that, you know what, I want to hang my boots up and not do anything. I think we see that very rarely these days.
Yeah. And so how does Restless actually help people? Let's say, I don't know, you have someone who wants to learn to reskill as a mortgage advisor or maybe as a writer or something. How do you facilitate, how do you help people kind of work that out?
Yeah, so I think that the first way we help is by socializing these ideas. So for writing, for example, you might want to go into becoming a freelance writer because you're looking for ability, you want to travel the world as you write. You might want to set up a business of your own and be more in control of your own hours. So there's a bunch of reasons that we can introduce that this might be an interesting route for people to follow. I think then we have kind of detailed guides as to what some of the pros and cons are of becoming a mortgage advisor or becoming a freelance writer. And then ultimately for people who either routes into that, I suppose. So for some, that's training. For many roles, training isn't actually a prerequisite, and you can go into later life apprenticeships, for example, or so on. But we try and pride ourselves on providing more pragmatic help for the career change guides as to this is how you go about getting started and what that best route is. For some, it is an online training course. For many, it's not. For many, actually, you'd be better off saving your pounds and putting it into kind of learning on the job, if that makes sense, and bolstering your CV and highlighting your transferable skills to get you through the door. Yeah.
And something you mentioned there that I'm not familiar with. Can you tell me more about later life apprenticeships?
Yeah, so the government was very specific when it set up the apprenticeship levy, which will affect most businesses, that there's no age cut-off on the apprenticeship levy. So many companies, probably the vast majority of companies today, still think about apprenticeships as a kind of a young 20s or even before, kind of upskilling people into the workforce. I think what we're seeing, certainly with the employers we work with, is that employers are really interested actually at this idea of reskilling people through a later life apprenticeship. And it may be that the training program is identical. It may be that the training program is very, very tailored. But if you've got a niche role that you're struggling to recruit because no one's got those exact skill sets, actually a later life apprenticeships where you take a lot of transferable skills and you bridge them with some technical knowledge, I think it can be really, really powerful. I think one example that is a bit like Marmite, but for those that are interested in it is fabulous, is that of a funeral arranger or a funeral director. So actually the co-op offer all-age apprenticeships. Almost everyone who goes into that doesn't come from that field. So the vast intake of their candidate base comes through apprenticeship schemes. And the average age of their apprenticeship will not be in their 20s. No. That makes sense. And similarly for care roles. So again, there's a real shortage of carers across the UK.
Yeah.
How do you attract people who haven't perhaps come from that background to go through an apprenticeship and train to become a carer? If that makes sense.
Definitely. And in fact, I was chatting to one of the things that I do. I practice as a financial planner. I ask some deep questions about what someone may not have achieved yet in their life. So, I have one question that I use that a friend of mine and a trainer introduced me to and taught me, which a chap called George Kinder. And it is one of those key questions is, if you were turning out the light tonight and you knew you weren't going to wake up again in the morning, that was it. I don't want to know what you're going to do in the next few hours. What I'm interested in is, what did you not get to do? And more importantly, who did you not get to be? I think that if you look at the kind of the way that we move through life, we go into an education system that is very much about passing examinations. It's not really, there's no point at any point we ask little Johnny when he's 7 what's going to be a fulfilling life to him. We say, no, just study hard and do well. And I appreciate that because we need some basic level skills to just even to be in this world. But even when we get to 16 and 18 to do, GCSEs and A-levels and then talking about degree courses, again, it's not so much the question about what's going to be fulfilling to you. It's, you're saying, well, what do you want to do? And often that is then kind of accountable to, well, it may be down to money and it may be down to, kind of status and hierarchy and all those types of things. And often you may find that when I'm talking to people in their 50s or 60s, that you may find that they did a career that was relatively enjoyable, but possibly wasn't as fulfilling as they'd hoped it to be.
Yeah.
We end up putting a ladder against a wall, and once we start climbing that ladder, it's quite difficult to get off it, because as we climb each rung and we get paid a little more, we get a bit more seniority, and we get paid a little bit more, and we get a bit more seniority, and then because of those things, we take on debt and we take on commitments, and it may be marriage, it may be children, it may be mortgages, it may be all types of things, and therefore a level of income is needed to satisfy all those things, and then it's very difficult to jump ladder because to move from this ladder to something else means you've possibly got to go and start again. Yeah. And then of course that creates an issue. So when I ask the question, who did you not get to be or what did you not get to do? I get some pretty deep answers. And therefore, I had a couple the other week who was saying to me, one guy had worked in the computer industry all his years and done very well, but he'd never actually got a computer degree. And he said, you know what, if I've got an opportunity now to get a computer degree, that would be great. And I said, well, let's look at it. Let's look at how we can make that happen. What, really? In my 60s? Yeah, why not? Well, this is available. There's online, there's this, there's that. And then his wife said, I never got to be a nurse. And that just brought me back to she'd had brought up a family, and they'd had a family quite early on, and there was something within her that felt that she wanted to contribute and be, and to be part of her community. And we're looking again in that what you mentioned there about, okay, well, how do you become? There is a need in the world for people like that, and therefore, is there a possibility of reskilling? And again, helping, I think, what you're doing is helping people to bridge that gap to go, well, yes, first of all, if we work out that we would like to do something, actually, how do we do it?
Exactly right. And I think increasing number of people are considering going back to university as a mature student. I think when you think about the increase in life expectancy, I don't know if you've read the book 100-Year Life by Linda Graham. It's fascinating. And with the basic thesis that 1 in 2 children born today will live for 100 years. Wow. This idea of going through education and then in work for a block of 40 years and then retired for what would be a block of 30, 40 years just doesn't really work for people, not just from a financial perspective, but I'm not sure people want to be retired for 40 years. And similarly, I don't think the solution is just to push your linear career path from 40 years to 60 years. I think that would bore the hell out of most people. So it's this idea that as a society, I think we're starting to see it, but we're nowhere near the mainstream seeing this, of this opportunity that turning 50 or turning 60 or what have you presents for later life development or new careers. I think when you think about someone turning 50 today, you can almost say, what's your 20-year plan? And actually, that question shocks people sometimes. But actually, when they stop and think about it, it's like, wow, that can be quite liberating. So actually, what do I want to do when I look back on my 70th birthday? What is it I want to do? Similarly, when you get to being 70, what's your 10-year plan? Actually, thinking positively about all the things you can achieve over the next 10 years is really powerful. And the opposite of almost just letting life happen to you, if that makes sense. So it can be quite inspiring for people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, tell me about some circumstances where you have looked at people retraining and gone, wow.
So we've had a couple of our members write into us to say that to share their personal story. We always love personal stories because it brings to life someone's situation and relevant situations that could be applicable to many people and kind of what they've done. And there's this one lady you read about on our website actually that left an abusive relationship in kind of her late 50s, went to school to study criminology, and succeeded in passing her degree in criminology. So it's an example of someone who's not necessarily had the luxury of money to be able to afford to retrain, but at the age she was able to get the postgraduate loan. The government extended the age of that from 30 to 60. It should be higher in my opinion today, but you can still get a postgraduate loan up to the age of 60. And actually retrained and kind of has followed her passion for this topic and this study, and is happy with the choice she made. So there's huge. We're always overwhelmed actually by some of the inspirational stories we hear that come in, and are kind of in awe daily at some of these tales. Right? It's inspiring for all of us.
And so tell me what the charitable sectors are looking for. What are the people who people may have got to the point where they're what I call financial independence. It's one of those things that financial independence day that we're all looking for, the point where we can decide whether we still need to go to work because of money or we don't need to. Doesn't mean you have to give up, but it means that you have the choice, which I think is what a lot of people are actually after.
Choice is everything, right?
So then people look to maybe the charity work. What are those organisations looking for, and what opportunities do you think people have there?
Yeah, so the charitable sector, they're some of the most popular roles actually within our site, as you might expect. I think there's still this view as to whether people would want to volunteer or whether they'd want to get paid employment with that. Even if you're beyond the point of needing the financial income, I think some of the roles that are perhaps more intellectually stimulating may be in one camp or the other, for example. So it's horses for courses. But I think the natural empathy that comes from having 4 decades in the workplace, 6 decades of interacting with people, I think is quite attractive for the charitable sector. given the nature of the roles. I think the strong community ties that people have, again, can be quite attractive for charities when they're thinking about bringing people on board. And I think one of the things we set up with the volunteering side of the site is we approached it from a very different perspective, but from what the user might want to do. So actually, if you kind of got an idea, you want to do something, but you don't know where do you start? You almost like trawling through lists of job volunteering postings isn't necessarily the best way to structure that. So we structured the volunteering site very much around, do you want to work with children? Do you want to work with the elderly? Do you want to work with animals? Do you want to be outdoors volunteering? And actually, for someone who loves the outdoors, you can go and volunteer with the Woodland Trust or with the National Trust and have some amazing exposure and have some quite sociable roles outdoors all the time, maybe the RSPB, for example. Similarly, if you want to help the elderly, but kind of in a more flexible manner, then there's a number of kind of befriending roles to help people in their 80s or 90s or what have you. There's just such a wealth of opportunity. If you're more interested in the multi-generational side and working with younger individuals, you've got charities that will help children to read, so you can get some real one-on-one time where you can really feel an emotional connection with the people you're helping. So there's just such a breadth of volunteering opportunities. We've come at it more from the helping people think about it. What is it? What type of thing might be interesting for you? And then how would you go about, what are the type of charities that do this type of volunteering?
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously we're on radio and people can't see the website at the moment, but when people hit the website, what should they be looking for to looking around what the opportunities, where do they go? Can you talk a bit about that and what they should be looking for and maybe the community and how that works?
Yeah, so the main website is at restless.co.uk, and if you type that into Google, it will come up. I think depending on what people are looking for. So if they're looking for, there's a jobs section of the site. If people are looking for part-time work or flexible work, there's an advice section, which is all about, contains all the personal stories that people in similar positions may have gone through. There's some genuinely inspirational stories, so it might be worth a read. And also the career change guides and so on. It's all under the advice section of the site.
Okay.
And volunteering section for those that are interested in that, actually navigating what type of volunteering roles that they'd be interested in. And you can find them all from the top banner of the website. So kind of each to their own, depending on what people are looking for.
Wow. And is there an opportunity for people to connect with other stories and other members?
So we have a Facebook group actually, which has got a thriving community of people on it, and we're in the throes of trying to figure out and launch something that will be much more interactive and dynamic, because we do see a huge community feel actually with what we're doing. So we definitely we want to kind of give people that opportunity to share between each other and share stories.
Yeah, great. Well, once again, as we did in the last episode, we'll put all those links on the show notes where they can get hold of you and the Restless website. And yeah, I just encourage everyone to get onto the site, find out what you're up to, see if there's any opportunities or inspiration. I think that often enough when you see other people doing other things, we suddenly we open some few doors really of what we're capable of, what would be fulfilling. And I suppose with all of this, again, the beauty about the stage maybe when you've got to either financial independence or you're just you're earning a little bit more money to supplement your pension income maybe, is that the career kind of drive that we had maybe in our 20s to climb a ladder and to become very successful, it doesn't need to be there. So you can actually just chase something that is going to be truly fulfilling to you. And whether that's learning a new skill, whether that's being in the community, whether that's volunteering, whether that's, it doesn't matter. So again, I think providing this information that you're doing, I think is fantastic. So all power to you, Stuart. And I do, really recommend everyone hitting the Restless website and taking a look, because I think what you're providing there is brilliant. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you once again to Stuart for taking the time to share what Restless are up to. If you'd like to find out more about Restless and the great work that they're doing, Check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find some useful links. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help more people like you to discover us. It really does help. To get in touch, please email me at hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk or connect on Twitter at JustinKingCFP. I'm always keen to hear your feedback. Thank you, as always, to my financial planner, the Fixed Fee Retirement Planning Specialist, for sponsoring the podcast. You can find out more about how they can help bring clarity to your retirement at myfinancialplanner.co.uk. So until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Cafe podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.